going to go ahead and get started. We're 3 minutes after the hour. So it's great to see a lot of familiar faces. I'm Melissa Davis. I'm the director of the Colorado Media Project, and I'm really happy to see so many of you here today. I know that a lot of you, a number of you, joined us a couple of weeks ago to kind of help us shape this initiative, and we're really excited to have you here to learn the next phase of what we're doing this year, as this is going to be a very interesting and iterative project over the course of the year. And so you brave souls that have joined us today to learn more, we're really excited about that. So I'm going to go ahead and get started. Today is all about talking through what the call for partners for this project is about, and answering your questions. So we're going to kind of quickly go over what we've, how we've kind of advanced our thinking about this initiative between last time we met with a group to kind of start building things and today. So you will notice that we have a call for partners on the Colorado Media Project website, and hopefully a lot of that is you've had a chance to read through that. But we're going to go through in a little bit more detail right now. And first off, I wanted to introduce my partners in this initiative. I'm going to quickly flip to a, hold on a second. Where is it? Okay. So I think you can see my, can you see my screen right now? I'm not sure if it's going to, for some reason, it's not letting me share my screen. So I'm just going to, it's going to be this like half sharing thing.
Oh my goodness. We're in, what if Zoom never even
and
banned
if you
me?
guys don't mind muting yourself.
We're in, bro. We're back in business, baby.
So I'm going to go ahead and mute a couple of people. Sam, if you can kind of keep an eye on that if people aren't muted. We have some amazing partners, I guess, that have stepped forward and are going to be working in a collaborative and a coordinated way for this project. Project leadership is with Rocky Mountain Public Media, and in a minute you're going to hear from Kim Salvaggio representing the Rocky Mountain Public Media team, which includes Rocky Mountain PBS, Cuvo Jazz, and The Drop. We have Martine Carcassonne here with us from the Center for Public Deliberation at CSU, which is going to be providing some training and facilitation co-leadership. Colorado Press Association and COLab are taking the lead on coordinating a reporting project along with this initiative. And then Colorado Media Project is providing catalyzing grant support to these partners, in addition to stipends for community-based newsrooms. And also wanted to just acknowledge that we have a number of advancing equity and local news grantees who are also really focused on community engagement this season and this year for obvious reasons, for an election year. But we're really excited that this initiative is really kind of meant to turn on its head this idea about what we turning down the volume on the national conversation and really getting above all of that noise to drop some hints about what our branding might be sounding like. So anyway, I just wanted to give a quick high level and then hand it over to my partners to introduce themselves and talk about their role. But just high level, what are we planning to do this year? This initiative is really about 4 things, and there's a variety of ways that your newsroom or your community-based organization can get involved. This will be a coordinated statewide community engagement initiative. We heard very loud and clear through a number of different channels. CPA and COLab did a member survey. CMP did some surveying. Community engagement was a top priority for most newsrooms in the state. And at the same time, a lot of y'all don't have dedicated community engagement staff. you would like some training, and just some support in general, to do more engagement with your communities. Also a statewide and local reporting project. There were a number of newsrooms that have gone through the engaged elections training last year with Harkin, and we're really eager to work together on some state and local reporting projects. So we're trying to incorporate some of that. Customizable collateral. A lot of you asked about, having some awareness raising just about the importance of local news and the centrality of local newsrooms and the role that they can play in elevating important conversations in the community. And so we are hoping to give you some branding power with some customizable collateral that we can all use throughout the state, to really amplify some key messages. And this comes from my own world of marketing. Having a unified campaign can really do a lot, especially when you guys are main amplifiers. You actually have these very big megaphones, and using some common messaging can really help elevate the status of newsrooms across the state as important conveners. And then a menu of online workshops. So you're going to hear again from Kim and her team, and Martin and his team about what they can offer you in terms of capacity building and really on the ground support. This isn't just about training, but also about coming in alongside and actually planning some community and local based events. So with that, I'm going to stop sharing my screen so you can see the lovely faces of our partners, and hand it over to Kim.
Good morning. Happy Friday. If we haven't met yet, my name's Kim Salvaggio. I am the Chief Community Equity and Access Officer for Rocky Mountain Public Media, which is PBS, Cuvo, Jazz, and 104.7 The Drop. I see one of my colleagues on here, Jeremy Moore, who is our Director of Journalism. So thanks, Jeremy, for being here as well. I think the question I get about this project more than anything is, what is the difference between like a community organizer and all of the hard work that you guys are doing right now to listen and connect with your communities? And so with being with public media, I have the privilege of working with communities and strengthening those relationships 100% of the time. I'm not trying to build those relationships and then hit a deadline, or, I talked to one colleague this week at another station where they didn't have heat. And so they were trying to figure out what was going on with the heat while trying to hit a deadline. That's one of the huge benefits of the public media, where we are the largest member organization in the state of Colorado, is we have a staff that is dedicated to building those relationships with communities so that journalists can do what journalists need to do. That's what we're hoping to provide, is that capacity building for all of our newsrooms across the state to really build that healthy ecosystem so that you guys can do what you do best. So for our, the way that we work is we work in a user-centered design mode. And so my first community to build this project with is those of you that decide to sign up for the project. And so what that means is you'll be meeting with me and members of the Rocky Mountain Public Media team to understand what you have been doing that's been going really well, that maybe we can add some logistical help, where you haven't been able to do things, where maybe you want to make deeper connections or new connections. That is what we need to know. And so we'll be meeting with you individually to start designing what some of that would look like between you and different communities or existing communities that you're already in connection with. We do have a menu that you can look at that in an individual meeting I'm happy to go through, but just to give you some high-level examples right now, we do want to start an online Facebook group, which someone from Rocky Mountain Public Media would be monitoring. We have an impact tracker, which tracks all the different things that we hear that participating newsrooms would also have access to. We have the ability to do virtual meetings where we're inviting different community and community orgs in for you to listen and engage with. We can do in-person meetings. We've done small, like 10 to 14 people, really curated groups to get into real deep listening around democracy, what's working, what's not. I want to just be really clear that to do user-centered design, I need you at the table with me so that we're designing something that is going to be impactful for you and to free up time and capacity for you to do what you need to do, which is journalism. So I'll pause here, and Melissa, I'll pass it back to you for our next person. I believe it might be Martine. But thank you all for being here.
Yeah. Yes. Handing it over to Martine.
Yeah, so I'm Martine Carkson. I'm a communication studies professor at Colorado State University and the founder and director of the CSU Center for Public Deliberation, or the CPD. So I started the CPD about 18 years ago. We serve as an impartial resource to the Northern Colorado community. I actually train undergraduate students as facilitators, and then we design and run events. So the city, the county, school district, community organizations hire us to design and run innovative events to help us have the tough conversations we need to have to be able to address our shared problems better. So my overall research is about kind of how do communities function? How do we build that capacity to kind of have these kind of conversations, to depolarize, to come together across perspectives. So I'll talk a little bit more specifically about my role a little bit later. But yeah, I'll just be a resource to kind of figure out a pretty big toolkit that I'm happy to share, and we'll just kind of see what fits best to help you do what you're wanting to do.
All right. Thank you, Martine. And Tim, can you talk a little bit about CPA and your role in the initiative?
Sure. So we're playing basically two roles. One is liaison to newsrooms in general. Kim will be working very closely with a cohort of up to 25 and really doing user-centered design directly with those. And then more generally, we'll be reaching out to newsrooms to figure out, how you can get involved outside of just that cohort. And then we're working with COLab, and many of you know Tina and sort of the reporting they're doing to figure out how do we take what we're hearing from the community and feed it back. So the community is not only talking with us, they're seeing their voices reflected in all the things we do. So there will be some reporting projects that will come out of this, initially just kind of feeding back to the community. Here's what we're hearing from Coloradans and these specific communities, and we hope a lot of you will be able to participate in that component.
Great. Okay, so I am going to share my screen one more time. Sorry, I've got a lot of windows up real quick. And just go over a couple more logistical things, I guess, about the project, and then we'll go to your questions. So as Tim mentioned, we're kind of thinking about this as a menu of options for participation. And if you go to our website at CMP, and I think Sam dropped the link in the chat, but you'll see there's a link where you can fill out a short form and really indicate to us what your desired participation level is. We know that you're all really busy, and each of you has different, you're in a different place. And so we really just give you a list of ways that you could be involved, and you can just check that list. And then over the next month, Tim's team and Tim's team will be kind of reaching out if needed to get more information, and then we'll be kind of sorting folks into different groups for different projects or different components of the project. So just high level, some options for participation are, if you just want to leverage the campaign collateral that's going to be created, you already have events and things that you're doing. Maybe you were even, it's a very complex plan that you have for this year. This is a way that you can augment that if you want to use the same messaging to just kind of become a part of that overall initiative. You can use that collateral and messaging to promote your own events, reporting, or initiative. You could just decide to be a part of the common reporting project. Tim and the journalists are going to be getting together to hone in on a series of questions, of common questions. And this is something Tim has led in his previous role at Mercer University, a very large scale initiative where they asked community members common questions and then did some reporting around that. I think there's someone in the people in the waiting room, Sam, if you don't mind. And then, like we mentioned, gaining valuable skills and event production support through cohort membership. If you would like to become a member of the cohort, please indicate that as well. You can get stipends for event production and support from Rocky Mountain Public Media. And then also in the weeks to come, we're going to be convening a steering committee to kind of help guide the initiative. Both participating newsrooms might want to be a part of that, or community groups. So if you're a community leader that's at this meeting today, please reach out to Sam. The call for partners that you'll see online is really targeted at newsroom partners. So if you're a community partner, please reach out and just shoot an email to to Sam or I. Going deeper into the cohort support, these are the things that up to 25 interested newsrooms will be selected to receive the one-to-one consultation that Kim mentioned, support with local partner identification and outreach where needed. We recognize you probably have some of these local partnerships, but who are some local partners that you might want to engage to expand your audience or elevate different aspects of what you're trying to do in the community. Event planning and on-the-ground facilitation support. We are envisioning some, maybe hopefully like larger scale, regional events and things like that. So some support there, and then stipends of at least $1,000 to cover event hard costs and community-based meetings. The selection timeline, we posted this on February 14th. Today we're having the Zoom information Q&A. The deadline is March 6th at 5 p.m. It's a really short application, so don't be intimidated. And no matter what level you want to participate in, please fill out the application, because that is what we will use to kind of gather up contact information and kind of keep people in the loop. March, that whole following week after the application deadline, just be aware that we might be reaching out. Rocky Mountain Public Media and or the CPA teams will begin making some calls if they have additional questions. And then March 11th, our selection committee will meet and decide on the cohort. And also, like I said, just kind of group you into the different participation levels. And then newsrooms will be notified on March 13th. And we're asking everyone to please hold March 15th from 9 to 10:30 for a kickoff meeting. So if you want to participate in any way, you'll probably be invited to that kickoff meeting. So just please hold that, since it's so soon after the notification. And then I'm going to hand it over to Tim and Kim and Martine to talk through some of this, because again, acknowledging that this is we are practicing what we preach, right, in this initiative, which is really listening to you, our cohort of folks, and you have your own needs and objectives for participation. And so a lot of this is going to be iterative, but that we did want to give you a general reassurance that we have some idea about how the year will go, and that it's really intended to be responsive to the realities that this is an election year and you do have objectives for your coverage, and we're trying to make some of this align with your own timelines. So with that, I'll hand it over to Tim, Kim, and Martine to maybe expand on some of this. Anyone? Tim, you want to start?
Tim, do you want to go first? Because I think my part comes after the working with newsrooms comes after the selection. So do you want to go ahead first?
Sure. So the call for partners is open now, and then we'll do the selection largely for the cohort that will be working closely with Kim's team. But we are asking, even if you're not signing up for that deeper involvement, go ahead and raise your hand and say you're interested in participating in some way, so we get a sense of how widespread this is and make sure we're distributed well across the state. And then Martine will lead a series of trainings to talk about how do you listen, how do you engage people in dialogue. And as journalists, you're used to listening, but it can be a very different type of listening that we're talking about here, where you're not listening for a story angle. You're really listening to build a relationship and better serve your community. And Kim can talk at length about that, as I'm sure Martine can too. And so there's a skill set there. And then also talking about, if we're going to do a series of reporting projects and we're gonna have some common questions, we'll talk about that as well. And then in the spring, have a season of listening and reporting. It may or may not impact how you're talking about local primaries, but that's the idea, is to give you an opportunity to listen to your community in that context. Although this is not all about the election, that is the context we're having these conversations in. And then, feedback to the community, as I said, what we're hearing. Of course, the primary election is in June, but people will be receiving their ballots, or have already been receiving their ballots. And so it's already starting to be on people's mind. And then, as Kim and the cohort that's working with Rocky Mountain Public Media will delve deeper, I'm sure there will be things that come out of that will shape not only future listening events. I can anticipate maybe some specific reporting projects that the conversations might highlight. And so we'll be very engaged and reactive to that. We have talked about potentially coming back around ahead of the November election to have another focused series of conversations with communities that will be statewide. And of course, in August, we have our convention and CMP Summit. And so that will be a good opportunity for newsrooms to get together, and also some community leaders that CMP pulls into their summit, and have a conversation about how the listening is going, what we're learning, how can we better serve, how can CPA and COLab better serve you as newsrooms. And so I think that gathering will also be an important point to evaluate where we are and where we need to go. So that's the general shape of it. The cohort that Kim is going to be leading, as she said, it's very user-centric, so there's a lot to be defined, but it is defined in the sense that there's a cohort, there's been a lot of planning and discussion going on about how that will proceed. The other pieces will be, emergent. We'll be talking with COLab and Tina and the groups that are involved in the reporting there, and how to integrate some of the things we're doing on the listening side with what we're doing on the reporting side. So there are some more defined pieces and some others that will be defined as we go along.
I think what I'd like to add to the conversation today too is one of the questions that we get a lot around community listening is we don't want to participate in the harm of the drop-in, where, hey, we've listened, we've done maybe a story or two, and then we don't have the time to have the sustainable, continuous relationship with community. And so one of the things we've designed at RMPM, which if you become a cohort of this project, you would also be a part of, is we call it the Ambassador 64 program. The 64 being obviously the representative of the 64 counties in Colorado. And it works as a cultural ambassador, a cultural broker. Sometimes you'll hear the word, depending on the community, promotores, which is essentially a person who volunteers their time to stay in communication with us, constantly giving us updates around what's happening in the community, where are the strengths, assets, resources, and where are the needs. That's something we have developed a little bit on a smaller scale right now at Rocky Mountain Public Media, which we've put a lot of resources into growing over the next few years. So I think to sort of get ahead of some of the questions that I get is, how do we keep this going? In my purview of working with communities, that there's obviously a need for us to be deeply engaged within an election year, but what happens after the election? How do we keep this continuous model of listening go? And so that's what we're hoping to build with your participation and the Ambassador 64 program. I believe next year, after we're through the election, we may be a little bit more focused on reconciliation, but that is also where we're looking for our community ambassadors to really help us know the direction of what's going to be impactful to the communities that we're working with. As Tim said really well, you know, I'm not being vague for any reason other than I believe in the power of community and user-centered design. You all are going to have different needs, and those needs need to be designed with the community that you want to connect with in mind. It's not a one size fits all, is what we've learned at Rocky Mountain Public Media. Different people need to connect with us in different ways, and to build that long-term sustainable trust through continuous feedback. So if you would like some time with me while you're trying to figure out if this is something that you can sign up for, please reach out to me over email. Sam has my connect, and I can also put it in the chat. I just want to stress that our job as Rocky Mountain Public Media is to come in and make this as easy for you to show up and really listen as possible. And that's not going to look the same for all of you, and that's actually really okay with us. So what I need from you is a little bit of a time commitment to just work with me so that I can design something that's going to work for you and the needs that you have to connect with the communities that you need. And also, I'm here for questions today too, if anyone has something specific that they want us to go into.
Yeah, and that might be a good chance to just open it up for questions. And while I did see a few hands earlier. Sam, did you capture that by any chance?
Not capture individual hands, they disappeared. So if you have a question, please raise your hand. There we go.
Quentin, there we go.
Hi, thank you very much. I wanted to ask, Tina convened a meeting with a bunch of newsrooms recently that I was part of, where we did talk about the reporting component that has been alluded to a couple times here. And I just wondered if Tim or somebody might share any of their thoughts about how you might integrate the two projects. Is being a part of the reporting component dependent on also being part of engaging communities program? Can some people do the reporting and be part of that component and not be part of the engaging communities program? And for the record, I do plan to apply. I think the program sounds great, and I want to be a part of it.
Some of that is to be determined. I mean, we've been trying to move very quickly and on parallel tracks. So there is a reporting project around the election that Tina has been helping lead with CPR. And we are trying to figure out how that integrates with what we're doing, because there's very obvious overlap in some of the missions in terms of hearing from the community what their concerns and priorities are. This listening project is a little broader than that, but it seems like that should be a component of what we're doing. So we're trying to figure out how to best integrate them, or at least have them touch base where it makes sense. So we're in active conversations to kind of get to the details of that. So the short answer is you can absolutely participate in one or the other, but there will be places where they intersect and inform each other. And we'll talk more specifically as those reporting projects start taking shape. We'll be much more concrete about what the interaction is with the listening and engagement that is going on.
Dave?
Yeah, one of the issues that we're already finding out about and wondering if we could collaborate with someone or get some help, and that would be with languages. And so here in Aurora, you know, there's a couple that are pretty easily solved, and we may be working with Jesus from El Comercio and on some collaborative things here where that one may solve itself. But there are so many languages here in Aurora, and we haven't identified yet in what ways we would look at these communities or constituencies. But that's something that we would definitely need some help with, is whether or not we would flexible to, you know, bring some kind of an interpreter or how we would aggregate these things. And so we're just finding our way through this right now. But we know that that's one signpost that we've seen already to election day that we're going to have to pay attention to as we develop this. And then the other is, I don't know if anybody else has encountered this, but we are being heavily lobbied. And that's how strange our world is right now, by a group that you would probably call moderate Republicans who feel that they also are disengaged from the media and especially us, and want us to provide listening opportunities for them outside of what are now become mainstream Republicans that are running the party here in the county. And one of these is our own board members. And so we're trying to figure out how we would handle this. And, you know, given in the beginning, we were looking at disengaged communities that would be more traditional or what most people would understand. And just the, you know, the very irony that we are being lobbied by suburban Republicans, just like, please help us, you know, reach you and talk to us and find out what our concerns are, is something that we're also going to have to navigate.
Kim, do you have any thoughts on that, especially the first one in particular? And then maybe Martine would be a great person on the second one.
Yeah, I think for Martine, I'll hand it over to you in a second for the second part. But as far as reaching bilingual or Spanish speaking, that is part of our capacity building at RMPM, where we do have some folks on the team that are bilingual to help making sure that we're creating spaces that are going to be accessible. I think, Dave, of even not just language barriers, but when we're planning community meetings, especially if they're in person, we need to think of things like childcare, accessibility as far as physical spaces. Like, there's a whole list of accessibility that we'll need to go through with the newsrooms to make sure that we're able to support all different lived experiences coming, whether that's language, physical ability. I mean, childcare is the biggest one that we learned, was being able to provide a place that people that are caring for children can come and talk to us. So that, I think, is going to come a little bit more in our one-to-one meetings of what specifically we need to make sure that we're creating places with accessibility in mind, especially language. That's a huge one. But Martina, do you want to speak to the second part of the question?
Yeah, I mean, certainly a lot of my work is trying to cut across lots of different perspectives and lots of different kind of dimensions, political ones in particular. My work has shifted from national politics to local, and, you know, how do we frame things sometimes to get away from some of the kind of the partisan framing. A lot of my work is informed by social psychology and brain science and conflict management and those type of things. But certainly having those conversations of how can you be a resource to help your community, and that everyone's a part of it from all different perspectives, is something that I'll be working on and trying to help y'all with.
And I'll just add to that first question too, you know, one of the, that as Kim alluded to, that's one of the reasons for the one-on-one, is to figure out what are those special needs for your community. And, you know, outside of Spanish and English, are there other languages we need to look at? And there may be opportunities for partners to help solve that problem. That could be a funding partner, but it could also be a group in your community, you know, that works with people who speak a specific language, and they might be able to provide some translation resources, et cetera. And that's why community partners is actually a big focus of that CMP has brought to the table, and really wants all of the newsrooms to think about what community partners might be available. And that's something that as a team we've been talking about, and Rocky Mountain Public Media has, you know, dealt with a lot of different community partners, have been putting some thought into who we might want to bring to the table to help with specific community needs.
Yeah, and I'll just add to that too. I mean, that issue specifically about how do you reach people in the language of their heart, you know, is a big conversation among foundations. And I know that some of my foundation colleagues have found some good statewide resources. So maybe that is something we can actually see if we can engage someone like a partner who's a translation partner. We can look into that, I would think. And maybe Kim, if you have some translation partners, like external resources in mind, you know, that's something we can take back. But thanks for raising that issue, Dave. Jeannie? Or is that Jeannie?
Yeah, it's Jeannie. Sorry, I don't have my last name on there. It's Jeannie Soldner, and I'm from the Soper Sun on the Western Slope. One thing I might suggest with languages is your public school system is going to already know what languages that they need to translate notices home to parents and guardians. So they already know the population of languages that they're working with, and they might be a resource for some translate, at least putting you in connection with translation resources.
Thanks for that. And we actually have one of the issues here in Aurora is Aurora Public Schools handles parents and families of 160 different languages that are spoken within the homes. So what we're trying to do, and they're being very helpful with this, is just that there is a political awkwardness and some inability for them to go too far with helping us, but they are already helping us isolate sizes of populations and where they are geographically so that we can start at least finding our way forward with this. We just knew that at one point they may be a perfect resource for us to say, hey, we hire these people, on a regular basis for our own translation. We don't know what we don't know yet, and are just asking, boy, if somebody's done this kind of thing before in a community like Aurora, any advice would be hugely welcome at this point as we move forward. And the point about, in-person meetings and whether we need childcare and accessibility and things like that, that's a really important point for a lot of the folks that we've talked to preliminarily about how we're going to handle this whole thing. And it brings another thing that we'll be looking at moving forward. How many of these would benefit the community by holding them in person, and would there be a benefit from allowing people to watch them remotely through WebEx or something like that, and some kind of a hybrid event, and how we would handle that too.
I just wanted to lift up Brenda from Greater Park Hill put a comment in the chat about partnering, or question about partnering with newspapers. Absolutely. That actually, in the first draft of the proposal from CMP, that was going to be a requirement, and we decided that might be too much of a lift at this stage, but there is a question about what newspapers you might want to partner with. So we absolutely encourage that.
Yeah, and I would just say too, part of the impetus for this whole thing was recognizing that there is limited capacity at each individual newsroom. Each of our organizations, regardless of if you're a newsroom or if you're CPA or even CMP, we all have tiny staffs, and so how can we think about things as place-based opportunities. We were trying to think of how powerful it would be to have a number of newsrooms and a number of community-based partners in a given geography, hosting something together, so it could be a bigger and a true kind of community-wide thing. So those ideas, and if you have natural partnerships, there's a space for you to put that, identify other newsrooms that you might want to work with, or other community partners that you already work with or that you want to work with. So just indicate that in your when you fill out that application, and we'll kind of work with you from there.
And I said newspapers, I meant any newsroom, by the way, so don't forget about your community radio stations and other formats. Partner with any of them.
I think I just want to add, just for the thinking as you all go through the application process, what I would encourage you to think about is who, through the lens of who do you want to invite to the table, and then think of ways that engagement is not going to look the same to every group of folks. As an example, we have one of our radio stations is 104.7 The Drop, and it's an urban alt. And initially, the data that we had gotten on the audience was that they didn't want to necessarily engage in conversations around democracy. And then in digging into it a little bit more, what we found was that, no, they do want to talk about democracy. They just don't want to talk about it in the way that it keeps being served. And so when we're thinking of how we want to design something, it is really important that I know, who are you trying to reach? Who's not at your table? Whose voice do we need to center? And then we think about what is going to feel comfortable for that person to engage. That's the belonging and welcoming that, being community organizers, we'd really love to lend our expertise to do, because it takes time and intention to create that space. So I really like out of the box ideas too of what's going to work for different folks. Again, it's not going to be a one size fits all, but I encourage you to think of that while you're filling out the application.
What other questions do you have? Or
I
guidance
just love that
for
I'm
us?
already seeing in the chat folks talking about potential collaborations.
Great.
If we've gone through this process, one thing that we've really looked at is whether or not, like you said, we are so short on resources. To organize even more than 1 or 2 events would be huge for us. But bolting on or just showing up at other events is much more realistic. To set up some kind of like a booth or something, that we were talking with some folks about, maybe traveling to several connoisserias, that we would, advertise this, like, hey, stop by and tell us what you're thinking. But if we could collaboratively put together events and organizations that might be helping with that, we're happy to provide with that, with anything we get, in our own event at sentinelcolorado.com email box or something. But if somebody could help manage that, like, hey, these are events that you may be interested in showing up and getting a booth at, or just talking with people or something, that would be helpful to us. Because we generally just don't have anything, definitely nothing right outside Aurora. And sometimes, it's a Denver Aurora event or something like that that we would be interested in going to.
Mm-hmm. Well, other thoughts, questions, concerns?
I have a question. This is Brenda. Are all these, in my former life, I think Martina and I crossed paths a lot. But are all of these meetings, are they all in-person meetings? Are there going to be, are we looking at some form of online digital things, or how creative are we thinking?
So Brenda, from the perspective of Rocky Mountain Public Media, because we are a statewide organization, we have staff members across the state, and we also utilize a lot of virtual spaces as well.
Okay.
So I think you could expect that we will try to design something that meets your needs so that you can be there to participate. And also in mind with what the community needs are, if they need smaller in person, or they need larger, or maybe, a virtual meeting is not going to work, but we're perfectly prepared to be offered a combination of both.
Okay. So it could be a combination of high tech, high touch.
Yes. I like that. High tech, high touch. Thank you.
In my former life, I did a lot of this, so it's a big shift for me, what I do now. But yeah, okay, got it.
And Martine, do you want to answer that too?
Yeah, no, I think a lot of the trainings will probably be online because we're trying to cover the whole state, right? But then in certain situations, it might make sense for me to come out. I give a lot of talks about the need to increase capacity in your community and that kind of stuff. I work a lot with individual cities and school districts and libraries. So there might be ways of me to kind of connect with some of the other kind of resources to be able to come out to you. So, and I like driving around Colorado, particularly in the summer. So as a faculty member, I'm not technically employed during the summer, so I have a lot of flexibility to do some trips, if that makes sense. But I think that the main training is probably gonna be online, just to keep costs down and make it easy for people.
And those engagements are part of that emergent process. Kim's team will be doing the one-on-ones and figuring out what you need in your community. If we're doing a statewide reporting project, it may be traditional one-on-one interviews, but you've got a standard list of questions that's feeding into a larger narrative. Back in Macon, we had someone we had a reporter show up at a library at a set time regularly and just say, hey, come talk to me and ask questions. Dave mentioned other events, things like that. It could even just showing up at a grocery store, setting up next to the Girl Scout cookie seller and say, talk to me about what you need, out in the community.
And I just want to say one more last thing, maybe about like this concept of a campaign, because I think even among our planning group, we've kind of had some internal conversations about this. And, just speaking as a person who, like, I'm a former journalist, so I was once, a reporter and, had my head in that space. But since, the last 20 years, I've worked in the strategic communication space and designing campaigns and really the power of, a brand, a thing that we're all doing together. And you hear it, all of us have, our audience, but they overlap a lot. And so it's really powerful when people start hearing about an initiative and they kind of get what you're after. And the whole point of this initiative is really to reinvite people to engage with community newsrooms and really see them as different than the noise that is happening at the national level, and really kind of base this in the power of connection from neighbor to neighbor, and really put newsrooms at the center of a kind of a better way of communicating and solving problems, which ultimately is the role of community-based journalism. So we're really, really excited about the power of having some partners across the state really kind of focused on the same mission. And really, I think there's evidence that this is, especially as newsrooms are seeking more revenue from members, more heart connection to the people who read or listen to your news, that this is a part of sustainability. So it is not just good for the community and good for your readers, but it's hopefully good for your own sustainability as well. When people really feel connected to your newsroom and really feel like they're getting the news that they need to make decisions in their lives with their families, and also to have a voice in their communities, that is an important connection, and even more so in a environment that we live in. So anyway, with that, I just wanted to thank you all for your time. We have about 10 more minutes if anyone wants to stay on and ask us questions, but I think we've kind of concluded most of that. Now, if you want to drop off, and feel free to stay on for a couple minutes if you have more questions. Thank you.
Yeah, I just wanted to share, this is Kevin with the Florence Reporter, just kind of share something that I've been doing for quite some time since launching the newspaper, and frankly before then. But essentially the local groups that are active in your communities, the Lions Club, the Rotary Club, these different civic organizations, they all present captive audiences and engage citizens. And so what I'm able to do when I go to, I mean, I could do a lot more, to be quite honest with you, but I have to be mindful of my space now and my newspaper, because I do have a print side of what we're doing here. But it's really important to give them a little bit of kind of elevate what's happening in their club. Like, they absolutely love it when you take what they feel is just kind of run-of-the-mill standard Rotary Club meeting, and then you package it in a way that's exciting and lifting up their message and what they're trying to do, whether it's a coat drive or whatever for the community. And they go crazy. They share this stuff. It goes viral. They say, pick up the Florence Reporter. We got an article in there, even if it's just, 150 words. I mean, and that's part of building that goodwill with the organization, because, there's no sense, in my opinion, I think there is some need to having that, building events and inviting the community and kind of posturing ourselves and positioning ourselves as those local newsrooms that care. But there's also that low-hanging fruit of just tapping into what's already happening, right? Like, some of my literally front page stories that I've written have been as a result of meetings at the senior center and water treatment and things like that, because they're having community conversations. And so that's just kind of what I've been doing with my newspapers.
Yeah, Kevin, I really want to thank you for sharing that. What I really resonate with what you're saying is, you know, we never want to feel like we're being extractive of our communities without recognizing the assets and strengths that are there. And that is traditionally where some of the harm may have been created between media and communities that haven't been centered within coverage, is that it can sometimes be seen through a lens of trauma or deficiency and not through assets and excellence. So part of what I think really good community listening does is it creates that connection of what are the strengths and assets in the community, and it connects the community members to other community members, with media being the go-between. One of the things I'm hoping that we might be able to tackle with this project is asset mapping. And there's lots of ways that we can do that, so that you know what you as a community member, you know the strengths that exist within your community. But sometimes that's not always seen outside of the community, and it's not necessarily seen with all the members inside. And so, Kevin, I really think that's such a key component of this project, is not to be extractive with communities, but to also highlight the strengths and assets that are there. So thank you for that comment.
The other thing I want to lift up about that comment is, you know, thinking about Rotary clubs and Lions clubs and all of this, thinking about where your community already gathers, not just your audience, but the different segments of your community. So those are good examples. But, you know, if you have a large Latinx or immigrant population, WhatsApp is probably where a lot of them are gathering. And we had a big conversation about that at night. If you're trying to reach young people, you know, they're probably on TikTok a lot, but do you know how they're using it, who they're listening to, what types of information they're getting? So that's the kind of conversations that we want to seed and have, and thinking about where different segments of your community gather is key. And then who could you partner, and how could you use these, you know, organizations and platforms and that sort of thing to engage them.
Awesome. Any last questions or thoughts? You guys are hanging on with us here. Well, I'm just really excited to be a part of this. It's been like a dream of CMPs, I think, for like 5 years since we've been in existence. And it feels really good to have all of y'all so interested in this work. So thank you for being here.
Yeah, definitely. I have one more comment I'd like to share. I'll be brief. So on Tuesday, our city council met about street closures, which is a pretty contentious issue here in Florence, because the restaurants feel that the antique shops closing down Main Street really impacts their business in the evening. It's a very it's local reporting at its finest, right? So there's just this back and forth with the chamber organization, the merchants organizations. And so I'm basically stepping in and saying, hey, I will moderate a community discussion in a couple of weeks. Everyone can come, you know, and we'll just do it that way. And everyone's pretty much on board and supportive of that idea. But point of my comment is, you know, I think, Melissa, you mentioned, is like serving as that vehicle for those community discussions to happen, right? Where I don't have any vested interest in restaurants or antique shops, right? Like, I just want what's best for the community at large. And so I'm looking forward to doing that. But that's, again, I didn't have to look very hard to find that opportunity, right? Like,
yeah, so. This is really interesting, because I think you're going to love working with Martine, okay? Because it comes to mind that, like, the tools that Martine can help you cultivate are how to host things like that in a way that's productive and that allows people to hear each other. And so, Martine, do you want to talk a little bit about how you can, you know, help newsrooms create kind of like issue guides for hosting that type of thing? Because you know, the high level training is like a concept, but it really does get pretty specific pretty quickly, and you can use this training to do that.
Yeah, I was going to jump in earlier and talk a little bit about a lot of my work is kind of more issue based, right? My projects are the city or the county, where, asks us to help. How do we talk about this issue better? Generally, we need to talk about democracy better, and we need kind of overall, how do we talk to each other, which is a big focus of my research. But then a lot of it is how do you dig in? We have so many ways for people to kind of express individual opinions. We have all these, online and so forth, all this noise, all these kind of individual people talking past each other. So a lot of my work is to try to make sense of all that, and then kind of design a meeting, and often has some sort of discussion guide or background, or how do we reframe issues that make them much easier to kind of engage, that push back on the simplistic kind of polarized kind of framing, and that's what kind of hosts, what we use at our meetings to spark a very different kind of conversation as we're going through. So that's some of the stuff we can teach. I'll also mention, most of my last 18 years has been running meetings. We've run over 500 meetings, mostly face to face, but then COVID kicked us off online for a couple of years. So we have a lot of experience on doing innovative online meetings, and mostly face to face. But then the last 3 years, we started a project called the Northern Colorado Deliberative Journalism Project, which was also trying to take these techniques and tactics that we use in these meetings to elevate the conversation. How does that actually fit into journalism in terms of how we're writing about issues and how we're framing issues and what kind of questions we're asking? So I'm kind of experimenting there as well, right? So there'll be some tools in terms of how to actually run meetings, engagement in the community, either face-to-face or online, but then also how do we think about our issue-based journalism from more of this deliberative conflict management kind of techniques that we've been playing with. So I'll be excited to kind of experiment and innovate with a lot of y'all about that. I'll post a couple links if people want to kind of dig into some of that. But
Cool. Thank you. Anyone else have any questions? I wanted to see if Mario, if you have any questions, because I was noting to our partners before getting on, I was like, hey, there's a lot of newsrooms have signed up, but then there's also community-based partners. And Mario, you kind of have straddled both worlds, but have been, so I'm interested to hear what you are thinking about this, and for a group like Claro, which you lead, where you see potential intersection.
Yeah, thank you, Melissa. Sorry that I came in late. I've been trying to kind of conjure and catch up with all the information you've shared. Somebody from our staff actually signed in before I was kept on another meeting. I am thrilled with the conversation and what's happening, and the essence, the need for this particular initiative to flourish. I do have the benefit of straddling both the media worlds and the nonprofit world now with Claro. For those of you who may not know, I was actually overseeing a group of properties that is owned by Intravision here. It includes Univision stations in Colorado Springs and Denver, and radio stations, including Aspen as well, and Denver, that serve the Latino community, Spanish-speaking audiences in Colorado. So that for several years. In any case, this role with Claro over the last 2 years, and just being present and making sure that from a media perspective, we engage and have and address a lot of these issues to that particular audience as well, and be inclusive in that role. I'm certainly making sure that Claro is engaged with that, and is making those contacts and connections, and making sure that the Spanish language media is on top of that. A key concern has been misinformation. There is a lot that is happening in that space, unfortunately, and it's being very effective, unfortunately. So countering that is an important piece along this as well. The digital platforms are actually extremely effective in that space as well, and broadcast doesn't escape that. So just in tune and making myself available, Melissa. This is wonderful, and I hope to learn more about it as we go.
Great. Yeah, it would be great to think about how we might proactively engage, you know, the Spanish language radio stations and TV networks in some of this work because they do have such a extensive reach. It would be really great. Maybe that could.
And I saw Rosana Longo as well, and I'm going to connect with her. And it's great to see her on board. So that's great.
Thank you. Thank you. What an honor to see you speak. And, you know, I admire you deeply. So please, let's connect with each other and let's support each other because our community needs it more than anything. It's a real public service. It's really not more than that. So I'm passionate and so are you. Let's combine passions and let's do something for the big need, okay? And now more than ever with elections, as you know, it's hard. It's difficult. Thank you.
Very kind, Rosanna. Thank you.
All right, great. Well, we're 4 minutes over now. So now we're going to have to sign off and we thank you all very much. If you have any more questions, don't hesitate to reach out to myself, Kim, Tim, Martine, Sam, any of us. Hopefully we'll got our contact info, or if not, it's on, Rachel is also on our website. So you can direct all questions to us. So thanks everyone, and we'll talk. Bye.